Hello, Dream Team. Welcome along to another episode of The Good, The Bad, and The Rugby. Celebrations and catharsis on this week's show, I think it's fair to say. Tinds is alongside.
Hello.
Which is as energetic as you've been all day.
I've just
We've gone into great
coffee, haven't I?
You had to take coffee. We've gone into great detail on this week's lock-in as to why Michael is zipping up his own body bag this weekend. Some remarkable achievements on your behalf, but that's available for our subscribers and listeners.
Yeah.
Do you want to very quickly just praise it?
So let's just say I got up at 6 a.m. on Saturday, went and watched England not to do very well, had 6 pints of Guinness to try and numb the pain, got home, got changed, got a kit bag, went immediately to King's Home and started at 12:35 a.m. Sunday morning, rowing and cycling for 12 hours. And finished at 12:35 just before the kick-off.
With another pint of Guinness.
Finished with another pint of Guinness, and we did 12,000. Yes, is that right? 12,000 kilometres in 12 hours. Yeah,
that is remarkable. Well done. Round of applause. What did you do? You just sit recline and watch telly with popcorn on your belly.
Felt very smug.
Yeah, exactly. It was an exercise in self-flagellation, which most English men and women, I'm sure, will have been through this weekend.
It actually worked for the weekend.
Yeah,
really.
I bet it did.
Yeah.
Well done for hanging in there and coming on the show. In the middle this week,
look at them.
I'm trying to work out which one
has
got
seen smugness?
smug. We've got Smug 1 and Smug 2. We've got the Chuckle Brothers, the gurning and grinning away. Shane Horgan and Ben Kayser. Which one of you has got the Colgate smile? You're both trying so hard not to.
Yeah, well, France have lost one, haven't they? So I think Shane wins.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'd just like to say to all the England players who do listen to this, he's really smug. So you need to really step up this weekend.
Bottle it and take it to
be smug very often. But,
well, you're getting quite a lot of smug now. You've got more smug opportunities than we do right now.
Listen, we get through 7 more days. That's all we need.
Right.
I fear for that England team as they go over there, and all the fans go, "Oh, you're good lads, you're good players. Just go easy on us this weekend.
That's
all you get. So you're learning.
I don't think that can happen again.
Go easy on us.
No. Do you know what we're going to do? We're going to come to England later because I am fascinated to get your two views on what happened at Twickenham, and I know you've sort of coming in off the long run. But this is the good, the bad, and the rugby. So should we start with the good? Who was better on Saturday? France. Should we start with France?
Who was better, France or Ireland?
Yeah.
Well, you make the case for France because I think it's a pretty strong one. But yeah, go on, and I'll retort.
Have you ever seen
completely different circumstances? You can't really compare them at all.
I love Ben, isn't he? He is very good.
He gets a lot of splinters, but he's very good at what he does.
So good on TV as well, isn't he?
The reality is, I was so good that I didn't get interviewed at the green room when I came out.
That was nothing to do with competence. That was
like the French stood at the back end.
I was waving at you. I just wanted to say
he just had a pint and he was grinning away.
Look, I genuinely think that the difference between England and France isn't 43 points. But on the day, it was because France were just untouchable. And
I thought you were going to say it was a few more.
No, but you know what I mean? Just the dynamic of a game, and you score 1, you score 2, and England got tremendous amounts of pressure, and the conditions were shit, and 72nd minute, people were leaving their stands. Of course, it was hard for everyone, but France played a monster of a game. It was fantastic to watch, and I think even as a sort of neutral, you still enjoyed the rugby that was produced. The first try, everybody loved it. Even the English were like, oh shit, that's a pretty good try. And for the first time, I think that I saw a half-standing ovation for Antoine Dupont when he left the field. I thought was a very pretty, a very cool moment. Just thinking, he's good, well done, well deserved. But it's just one of those days where everything clicked, where they really took the bull by the horns, and I was tremendously proud of what they've done. Genuinely felt bad for Ellis because that's a tough one to take on the chin.
Just take the bull by the horns. They also castrated him at the same time.
But so look, and I'm sure we'll speak more about it. But in completely different circumstances, I was very impressed with the way that Ireland managed to find a way to sneak that victory in a very convincing way.
Yeah, I think the performance level that France had at the weekend was the best of the certainly of the weekend and potentially of the championship as well. I think the game suited them in that I feel France were almost playing a sort of a counter-attack style somewhat. So they absorb pressure, or they can absorb pressure, and if you make an error, and it doesn't have to be a big error, they just switch the mindset immediately and they exploit that, and they did that time after time with England. So the level that they played at was probably the highest of the weekend. But what I was really impressed with Ireland was dealing with the adversity that they faced. One, a Scottish team that weren't intimidated by them as world number one and came to play and gave it their best shot, played some of their best rugby in that first half, and Ireland absorbed it all, aside from one try, and ended up going in at half-time a point up. 3 major injuries in the first half, losing the 2 hookers early in the second half, having a 7 throw the ball into the line out, have our sub-prop come into the scrum and deal with the line out, have a functioning line out after that, and have a dominant scrum. And taking their, absorbing all that pressure and letting Scotland gas out and driving it home for the second period of that second half. So I was amazingly impressed with that Ireland performance and some of the rugby they played, but most of all their how they dealt with the adversity. So a really big tick for Ireland in a slightly different way.
Okay. We're going to get into all the detail in a moment. What I do want to just start with is a sort of an overview of the weekend. So we've also got our good friends at Honda who want a one-word review of the weekend's rugby. No swearing allowed, Tins. If you had to sum it up in a single word, what would you go for? This week, we've all written down our words on our clipboards to do a bit of show and tell. Michael, first of all.
I've gone for magnifique.
Oh, good boy. I like it.
Check the spelling. Well done, mate.
Because, obviously, France were magnificent. England, not so. But then I absolutely loved the game on the Sunday. I thought it was just enthralling to watch and it was a magnifique game.
It was.
And if you say that as well, I'd even go there. I thought the Italy-Wales game was just so good to watch. I was very frustrated for Italy.
Yeah.
They created so many opportunities and when they do their video, they'll be kicking themselves because I know I predicted them to win, but they should have won. They created 4 or 5 opportunities that they just blew.
Yeah.
But it was great watching, and each game was magnifique.
Very good. I like that. Big crowd in Rome as well, which is good to see. Benjamin?
So I've gone with another French word. I've gone with délicieux because obviously it was absolutely delightful on Saturday. But on top of that, my wife is English, so it's going to make every single Sunday roast even more délicieux. With my father-in-law looking at me, and whenever he tries to go in a way that's and tries to back me in the corner, I'm just going to throw him that 53-10, and that.
Does your wife watch this?
She did, yeah.
I was going to say, I bet she doesn't, because that's why you're giving it out. But we'll clip it up and make sure that she has seen the.
But you're laying down. Did you watch the game? No, never. No,
exactly. Yeah.
So
you can talk in brave.
Only quality.
You're talking brave terms, thinking that she'll never see it. We'll make an effort to give it to her. Délicieux is very good. Yes. Go on then.
Also, I'm annoyed at how beautiful both their hands are, and my writing is my wife describes it that of a serial killer. so
is that your pastime?
Yeah. So confirmation, and I think we saw the weekend, all the teams almost confirmed an element of what we thought about them. So Ireland, I think, confirmed their resilience and their position at world number one, dealing with a Scottish team who confirmed that they have moved on what they're doing and that they have ability to play at a high level and aren't the finished article, but are a really big threat and will be a threat to any team in the World Cup. Confirmation that France haven't gone away, far from it, and they were back to their best, and they're I think, favourites for the World Cup off the back of that performance and home advantage in the World Cup. Confirmation that England have a long way to go to get back to sort of anywhere near the top table. So a big rebuilding job that everyone thought they had to do is being reconfirmed. Wales aren't as bad as maybe we thought they were, and that there's something there. There was a lot of talk about an Italian victory beforehand. I still think I didn't buy into it, and I thought it confirmed also that Italy, as much as we want them to be this side that's competing against the other teams of the Six Nations, still aren't there yet. So that's been reconfirmed as well.
Yep. A lot of confirmation. I wondered where you were going to go with the England one. I thought you could have kept it shorter and sweeter. But yes, I think most people know what you're saying. Yeah. I've changed the rules for me because that's how I play. I've just simply done an acronym,
but
which is
still, you know, he's an artist.
I did A-level.
He whittles woods.
With the word. I've gone for the acronym WTF, which stands for Wow, the French.
Yeah.
As well as What Was That from England, or worse to that effect. It was. I mean, it certainly wasn't boring, the weekend, and we're going to get into it in a bit more detail. But just sort of to round that up, I think some nice kind of genericisms. That's not even a word, but we'll go with it. And thank you to Honda for supporting us and for being a part of our show during the course of the Six Nations. I would like to start with France because that seems to be the statement performance, I think, of... I'm just sort of trying to think, really, what team laid down a marker quite like that? I know Ireland are ruthless and they're very good at what they do, but that was jaw-dropping. Can you remember France playing as well as that in recent memory? I was thinking that World Cup semi-final, but that was sort of hit and hope type thing. This was everything on point, and I can't remember France playing like that. Can you?
Not for 80 minutes, definitely not. I think they said it after the game, obviously, that the coaching staff was very much aware of just not the full performance that was being delivered in this Six Nations. They were just not totally happy what happened. Got completely dominated by Ireland, but still disappointed with their own strategy. Thought they overplayed in their own half, and so you sort of gave the opportunity to be spanked by Ireland. That's what happens when you face the number one team in the world. And this one, they really wanted to. I didn't know how much intent they had to shock the world and to show how much the confirmation of saying we're still right in the mix. We slipped up a couple of weeks ago against a fantastic team, but we're still absolutely in the mix. I didn't know how much of what was it, 18 years of waiting for another win at Twickenham was so important within the team. They kept on repeating, it's about creating history for them, right? So you come back, you win the Six Nations, that's one thing. After a couple of attempts that were failures, this week was all about writing a new page of France history, and they really did it. So it was a matter of, we're not just going to win. To give ourselves a chance to win the whole Six Nations, we needed the bonus point. When do you ever go up to Twickenham thinking you're going to score 4 tries? That never happened. Yeah. And that's the amount of confidence, but also determination that they had before the game. And I think we saw it from minute one. The conditions were a little bit iffy. There was a few changes that we just wasn't sure about in the England side. We were down 4 tight-head props. And there's a few bits. Jonathan Danty has had 60 minutes under his belt for the last 3 months. So I was thinking, surely they're gonna get going slow and steady. From the kickoff, they chuck it from their own half and they score. Maybe not from the kickoff, but almost. And they score a 70-meter try, which is absolutely sensational, not planned for. And they kept on taking risk after risk after risk when the conditions were pretty shit. And when, like you said before the show, when England were actually not being clinical enough. I remember Freddie Stewart just dropping a ball, zero pressure, kick straight to touch, few silly penalties in the ruck, all those things. So incredibly impressed. I completely underestimated how fully focused they were on not just winning, but really creating history during that week. It's easy to explain after the game, but it really was their motivation. So I was blown away by the whole performance.
They were going after 50 points as well, weren't they? That was, and
they were ruthless.
Yeah. As an Irishman, I was sort of had one eye on the 50-point mark as well. So
good on you. Thank you for that.
I was going through. Actually, I wasn't at the games. I was travelling up to the Scottish game. I was going through Heathrow, and I was watching the match unfold on my phone as I was going through. And I'd just gone through security and bumped into Rob Henderson and Craig Chalmers, who I'd say were...
So you ran very quickly.
So I would say... There was no way out. I would say conservatively they were 7 to 8 pints in at that stage, and they were just scanning around for a boozer. So we sat down, had a pint and watched the game, and as the score was just ticking up, and I was like, I think they're going to do 50 here. And Hendo said, listen, if time was running out, and they were at 48, 49 points, and they got a penalty, I really want them to kick the goal. But it didn't even come to that because they breached the threshold, and then that try at the end. And your point, it was a 80-minute performance in that they had that sensational try at the start, and then a completely different type of try off set piece that systematically broke down the English defence. Very troubling for England because it wasn't even close to getting a hand on it.
No, anyway. There was no reason for it to be there. If you go into the detail of it, I don't know what system they're playing, and the fact that the fullback's not shutting the gate, and
there was 3 guys on the inside that weren't defending anybody.
So Watson's gone up and jumped in, and if Freddie
this is for the Payno
yeah
strike move. I think that's exactly the same move they ran in the Autumn Nations Cup. Is it not?
No, exactly.
It's a different
exactly. But close, you're right.
It's a different move.
Exactly.
It fundamentally The idea is the same behind, because what they get Dupont out a bit wider, so there's a big pass. They cut off all the inside defenders, and then they start they have a threat in behind, and they start making the defenders make bad decisions, and they couldn't have made worse decisions. They were terrible.
Okay. Yeah. Let's save England, because I do want to get into. I mean,
I don't think we can.
It's very interesting, and I'm actually genuinely interested where the size. If you're measuring the size of the stories from the weekend, which is the biggest story out of Ireland winning with everything falling apart, France putting 50 on England, and England's total implosion on a global scale?
I don't know. I think France being back. I think there was, and you know, I was kind of I was looking through this Six Nations and going, I didn't have any doubt that France were going to be phenomenal in the World Cup. But I did think first few weeks of the Six Nations, I thought their players were looking a bit leggy. I thought they've a huge amount of game time. You know, they go back to their clubs, they play. It's just a big ask. And I thought this was maybe a Six Nations where they just got through it. I did expect them to win. I tipped them to win, but I didn't expect that performance. Win next week as well. So they've had a steady, decent Six Nations, but ultimately didn't win the Grand Slam. Nothing spectacular. But that performance the weekend changed it all again. And it frightened, I would say, everyone in World Rugby. Ireland know that they got France on a good day for them and a very good performance. But when France get to that level and play that type of performance, which you expect them to do in a quarter-final or a semi-final or a final of the World Cup, who can live with them? Who can live with them? I don't know. Anyone can.
He's already playing. He's already getting ready for the World Cup.
I'm glad he's turned on
Who's
you.
the number one team in the world? Bloody hell! Everybody's always raving about France. There's no chance. They're the one destroying everyone. They're the one who put 30 on us. But at one point, that's really. You know how some things click and they're not planned. Grégory Aldrit is the one I think you're referring to. Guys playing too much, and Ronan O'Gara is really did not help France. He's milking him dry with La Rochelle. But it's only fair when you have that quality player. And Antoine Dupont Toulouse is the same, and it's not Ronan O'Gara. You've got to play them. And it so happened that the poor Anthony Gelon got injured, and there was a red card against Mohamed Awas, and they pulled out Grégory Aldrit after 20 minutes against Scotland. And so between that game and the 2 weekends of rest, then he said it during the week, it's the first time he had almost 4 weeks with 19 minutes or 20 minutes of rugby played. So he was fresh as a daisy, and he absolutely killed it on Saturday. So there's a very strong link between the minutes that they had under their legs, undercooked against Italy, over-prepared for Ireland, poor strategy, and then they just got smoked by better team.
And Aldred that's the interesting guy, because he was being phenomenal for France, and he hasn't been in the Six Nations up until then, so it makes sense.
How did France produce so much power? Because power seems to be one of the things that's fallen out of the game, and where England had a bigger pack statistically.
Just on that, I think for 2 years they've been the most powerful pack. It's just this Six Nations they've looked drained, whether it's because they've had a
France,
bit of a break. Yeah, France.
Yeah.
So through the autumn and everything else, the biggest thing that has changed between France since Sean Edwards is how much they front up physically. I think they've been outstanding at that for 2 years, their pack, in terms of just smashing people. And then was the biggest thing I said after the first 2 games. I said they don't look like the physical unit that they looked in the autumn, and then before that on the weekend it was back. And it was back in a big way. And, when they play and they get that physicality, that completely changes their game. They're swarming, and then you add in the skill that they then have. Yeah.
And their physicality,
it's worrying.
Their physicality isn't just their pack, which is enormous and physical and powerful, but the physicality of their back three.
Yeah.
The power. They just look they look like, an elastic ball or something. They're just ready to go, each of them.
Dante and Ficou aren't exactly showing.
I know. Well, there you go.
Oh, that's it.
And then Dupont
now there's
at 9.
Dupont.
Yeah.
You don't see an athlete like Dupont.
Yeah.
You just don't see them.
So it's right across. It's not like big pack, big powerful pack.
No.
They're all phenomenal athletes.
You can't stop talking now because we're talking up the French. You have to put your mic up and give us a little.
No, you have to agree.
No,
Yeah.
but
It was frightening, wasn't it?
Look, let's talk next week after Ireland do the Grand Slam, and then we can trash them a little bit and say they're going to slip up in the world. No, but this is
But they're rightly 1 and 2 in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
I said after yes, it was 30 points against Ireland, but you play that game 10 times, it could go either way. because that's just the nature of how momentum is, how the game shifts and ebbs and flows. And if France get on the front foot, they could put
or home and away. That's we saw it last year. France won last year. We won this year. So it's as slim a margin as that potentially.
Let's just say it's great for Northern Hemisphere to go into that position with those two teams. I feel all eyes are on the Six Nations at the moment, because what we can say is every game's fascinating to watch.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. With all the games were a treat to watch. But to go back to your point about physicality, look, that's the way that we approach rugby. I don't think the Springboks will ever be not physical.
Yes.
That's just who they are. Yeah. That's how they're built. I don't think Irish rugby will never be fast-paced and attack-obsessed. That's just who you guys are. Now, there'll be shifts and changes, and okay, we have to be physical. We have to consider scrummaging as a number one asset and a real a tool, and we have to be abrasive about the way that we do things. Now, we'll never be the Springboks. Neither will we ever want to be, another team that Japan. That's just not who we are, and that's where it hurts against seeing England, because England were very similar to us in terms of wanting to having that dominant power, especially up front, and I think they've lost it a bit, and that really showed on Saturday, that whenever you were a little bit in the shits, so you wanted to have either a big back that would give you a bit of momentum, or you want to have a strong pack that could molest somebody in the scrum or have a driving maul. Every single driving line out or driving maul from England got collapsed and got killed.
Yeah.
And that's just something that can't
happen.
What?
That's an interesting point around identity. And if you're trying to be somebody else's identity, somebody else's team's identity, I think you're always going to be second best at that. And it was an issue for Northern Hemisphere teams, maybe France aside. Big thing for UK and Ireland teams. They would look at New Zealand or Australia and go, "Oh, let's do what they're doing." Yeah. But I feel at the moment Ireland have very much their own identity. France have their own identity. South Africa and New Zealand have their own identity. Australia will soon. Australia will. And Czechia will have RG having their own identity. Yeah. Scotland are clear what Scotland are doing. It's not
Japan
perfect.
Do too,
as Japan do too. What's England's?
Yeah. Well, yes, I think if you're switching between Farrell and Smith, you're probably trying to
there's your problem with Wales. What's Wales at the moment? Yeah. So the teams who are underperforming are not delivering what they should be. Like, you were very clear on what Wales's identity was for a very long time. For England as well, your team, you knew exactly what they were about. Traditionally, France, Ireland have moved from a different tradition to a model now that is very much Ireland, which is very different than it was 20, 25, 30 years ago, where Ireland was, boot and bollock and that sort of thing, and it's not
was that on the game, was that on the whiteboard?
Yeah, that's what it was. And it was passion. Now, Ireland are a sophisticated, skill-based, tempo team. So that identity is having your unique identity is, I think, what teams will max out on. And if you're trying to be somebody else's identity, you're always going to be second best.
Who most encapsulated boot and bollock? Mick Galway?
Claw? Claw. I tell you, Golov was the one in my head, but Claw. But there was a long list. Yeah.
Those were great days. I want to ask you about the reaction in France. So, Roi d'Angleterre, said Le Parisien. And I quote a tearful France coach, Fabien Galtier. "Yes, I realise what we've done. I've been coming here since I was 20. We played the way we wanted to play. We didn't know exactly how, but we had that drive. And doing it here in this context, it didn't happen by chance. We've been working together with these players. It shows we're on the right path." What does Saturday do for the team and broadening it out for the World Cup?
I don't think it's... For French rugby history, Twickenham is a very special cathedral because of the 99 semi-final against New Zealand. It's a game that everybody remembers. It's a game that everybody cherishes. It's the try of Dominici. That's how he became a French rugby legend, just on that one particular game. This one does not have the same significance, obviously, because it's not a semi-final of World Cup, but it's not far. And that's what they've created. So I think the emotion from Fabien Galtier... He's good. He's very good. But
do you mean that in the way that he's sort of playing the game?
I don't want to go there. He dedicated the win to Bernard Laporte, which was his mentor, but who got caught for fraud. He's like,
wow, that didn't make it into the Telegraph.
That's quite French, isn't it? It feels like.
Look, I don't buy into this. I buy into the raw emotion that he felt because he was part of that 99 team that beat New Zealand, him and Rafael Ibanez.
Yeah.
So there's a very strong link, and he knew that he created history, and that deserves to have sky-high emotions, absolutely. So that means a lot for French rugby as a whole. It means a lot also, and I think Antoine Dupont said it at the end of the game, when we all click, this is how good we can be. Now, you need to click at the right moments, and Shane said it. Is it going to be a quarter, a semi, the opening game against New Zealand, the tricky game against Italy? You need to click. So they need to find the keys to decide. So whatever they've done during the week, whatever they've done to actually get there, they need to have that as a collective memory of saying, look, these are the buttons that we need to activate to collectively completely click. Because they will need at some point some extra resources, some superhuman strength, superhuman strategic power and cohesiveness to win the World Cup, because there's going to be tons and tons of challenges ahead. So I'm always very scared of having certain things about this World Cup. You just don't know what's going to happen. A million different things can happen, but at least that's one more tool they can activate if need be.
They're in a different position now. I know they've had a brilliant couple of years and they had the Grand Slam last year, but this is France needed it in some ways, just to remind themselves of how good they could be and actually what sort of standard they can get to. Now, no matter what you say, sort of England are still top tier team. It's England, it's Twickenham, and to do that just instills in your mind your level of performance can be so high that you can win a World Cup, right? So France don't know that they haven't won a World Cup, but that sort of performance indicates that they can do it. There's certain milestones along the way that you need to do. I think winning a Southern Hemisphere series is a big part of it. Winning a Grand Slam is a big part of it. They did it last year, beating all the Southern Hemisphere teams. They've done that. But then that type of performance in a Six Nations before you go into the World Cup. Listen, can you imagine the first training camp into the summer, and how the French will feel about themselves and the performance level, and where it could have been coming through a lackluster Six Nations with no Grand Slam, one defeat. As I said, what I thought might have been the case. It's kind of, there's something in we'll get together and we'll perform better. Now they're going into it saying we can do anything we want here, and I think the opportunity to win the World Cup becomes more real in their mind's eye now as a result of that performance.
If they don't face Ireland, who's the number one team in the world.
Stop passing it around. It is what it is. It's great to be where both teams are.
Is it consistency now for France?
Yeah, of course. The last 2 years it's been incredible.
But how they've moved presumably we're saying they've raised the bar.
Right.
You've got to do it again next week.
Fundamentals for me. Consistency in selection. They have people who are chomping at the bit and a great group of players. And that isn't just the 1 to 23. They have got a 35-man squad. That is fantastic. It's without doubt. You could see it on the touch of the sort of the French barbarians that took on England, that just dismantled them. They have got quality players throughout that league. You've seen it coming up through the 21s, and it's now it's the right age group. They are all knitted together. They're in the best place. They're all great to watch. You could even argue that some on the bench you would like to see start, whether it be Makalou or whatever. So I think they're in an amazing place, and they play the rugby that everyone wants to see. They have that Frenchness. I mean, Dupont, Entimac, Payno, whether it be Ramos or Jaminet was always my favourite, but getting picked at the moment. But
what happened to Dulin? I mean, he was brilliant 2 years ago.
But that's the thing. You've just got all those players, and they've just got it right at the moment, and they found who they are. I mean, Shaggy just talked about England don't know who they are, and to put some context on that. After the game, I was watching some of the socials from England, and I was watching them walk in, and I was with Mike Teague, and I was like, who in that team are you scared of? Because they all look like young boys. Now, that's not having a go at them, but that's just me thinking at that moment in time. You see Ellis, you go, yeah, you won't want to meet him on a dark alley. Maybe Ludlam, and then whereas so if you're going to look like choir boys, you've got to play. You got to be nasty at some point, and that's what Test match is. And I know people have questioned whether the Premiership's led it there because it's all about tries. It's not really about. There's no substance. And Test matches are hard, and
Yeah.
you've got to have those people who will stand up. I mean, it'd be interesting what he does now.
Yeah, it will. Let's come back to that again. So interesting you mentioned the under-20s, because France put 40 on England in the under-20s. And actually, if we're talking under-20s, Ireland put 80 on Scotland in Scotland at the under-20 level, which does lead us on to Ireland. What most pleased you? I mean, we sort of touched on it a little bit, but was it the ability to fight their way out of a tricky situation with everything falling apart around them and still just having the confidence, the wherewithal to find a way through?
Yeah, that was exactly it. Their calmness, their I think confidence in their own ability. And I'm definitely a product of one, sort of growing up watching Ireland in the late 80s and the early 90s, and then sort of transitioning that period where expectations were so low. Like the idea of beating France, even beating England, they were precious jewels that very, very, very rarely happened. During my career, we hadn't beaten New Zealand ever. We hadn't beaten. I think we had maybe beaten South Africa once in our whole history, or drawn with them. We hadn't beaten Australia since 1979. So their expectations were so much lower, and that definitely fed into some of our performances in those early years. But this generation has moved away from that. The shackles are off. They're not burdened by some of the anxieties that we have, and they feel almost like sort of automatrons or machines. And whereas I was in the stand going, "Oh, we're in big trouble here. We've just lost our two hookers. Van der Fleer's throwing the ball in. Things aren't going right. Scotland look really, really impressive." Ireland just kept on going, and at half time they should have been more down, but they weren't, because their big players had big moments. And Van der Fleer, that turnover after the tackle on the inside shoulder by Hugo Keenan was a real crucial moment. And then they absorbed that pressure, which every good team will have, and they'll have at the World Cup. Their opposition will have the World Cup, and then just found another gear. They were very calm about the situation they were put in, and their big players started to step up with really big plays. So Jamison Gibson Park came on, box kicked the ball about 45 metres to totally alleviate pressure. Mac Hansen turned over two
that's
balls.
Good old Ireland, bringing up a box kick.
Yeah.
Actually, and then Mac Hansen, of course, took the box kick, which seemed to be a little bit of a dodgy option. He made it into a really good one, and that ultimately led to a try. Lowe had loads of involvements. Jack Conan took a crucial position. Van der Fleer started throwing the ball into the line out, and was actually his
5 out of 6, wasn't he?
His stats were phenomenal.
Yeah.
So there just seems to be a measure of confidence in the way they play. So, in adversity, and there was major adversity in that game to turn it around, and then ship, 3 major injuries for key players in that first half as well. And to deal with all that and then come out and play the type of rugby they played in that middle period of the second half. I have unbelievable admiration for them, actually. That's what I felt most being in the stadium. I felt I have admiration for this team.
Okay. What did you make of it?
Hansen, extremely impressed with this performance. I didn't watch 80 minutes, but I think the 50 minutes that I watched, every passage of play he did something right. There's 2 consecutive turnovers on his wing. Nothing's really there. You see a teeny little dude.
Did you only watch 50 because you were eating some roast beef whilst drinking some great French wine? I know you did.
Taking care of my children.
By the way, he had a brilliant last 30 as well.
I saw
he
that.
really did.
I saw that. I saw the 2 consecutive turnovers. I saw the ball in the air. I saw he dummies and then throws a pass for Jack Odom to set him up on the try. I was like, bloody hell, this guy can do anything. Yeah. And let's face it, he's not the biggest.
No. I loved Andrew Cotter's description. He looks like a Nebraska Oiler, I think. He really does.
Yeah,
he's come out of some sort of
say a logger.
Roughneck.
Yeah, really redneck. Yeah,
tremendous amount of confidence. Like Shane said, they were always calm and collected. You could tell there's a good leadership group, probably around Johnny and all that. You just take care of those tough decisions. Now, if you want to throw straight into the idea that you can play rugby without a hooker, is that really where you wanted to go?
I wasn't going there. Don't look at me. That was Tyndall saying get rid.
I'm not sure, because basically, imagine throwing the line out after you having to scrummage. Yeah. I would have been 100% too. So no, look, I was very impressed. I think it's more credit to the calmness of Van der Fleer, but also the line-out callers who probably putting in a perfect situation because none of the throws were extra hard, but the strategy was perfect. And then Keane stepping into hooker. I'm not sure every single prop can do it, but he's been there.
But do you know what I loved? And this speaks.
But that shows also that they thought about
that's it.
Yes.
I was about to say that. That's the point because I know Keane Healy was down for the 3 positions in the front row, so there was no issue there. He was named in those 3 positions, and Van der Fleer had practiced, and you can see by the way you get anybody else to step in there and throw the first goal, they don't win 5 out of 6 lineouts or however many were. Yes, they were going a huge distance beyond the 5 meter, but he got it there. And listen, there's another conversation to be had as to why on earth Scotland weren't people getting somebody up earlier because knows this is where the ball
make
is
him
go.
try to throw at the back.
Yeah, and give him the back and see if he does it. Now that's a different conversation, but they had prepped that. So and this is the sort of scenario and the planning that and the detail that Ireland go into, that even in those sort of bizarre circumstances that you would think would never occur, they had a plan for it, and Van der Fleer knew that was his job, and he stepped in and he did it.
Where's your love level for Ireland right now? Because you've been on a journey with them over the years.
No, my love level's right up there with them. Obviously it started off quite low when they were playing under Joe Schmidt, and it wasn't about. And even though it was very negative what I said about them under Joe Schmidt, it was because I felt they had way more. They had a back line that I could see the potential, but they never used them. It was all about pressure, all about where you were on the pitch in terms of getting penalties, getting in there, and they knew what their forwards could do off a line out within 15 metres of the try line. Whereas Faz, Catty, Easterby, everyone, Paulie, everyone who's involved in that squad is they've opened up the whole field.
Yeah.
They've opened up the whole skill set of the whole team, and then they've put trust in them. And they've repaid them because you've still got the basics that were clearly drilled into them by Joe Schmidt. They've still got that to fall back on. So, you talk about adversity. When things go back, they know they can flick back to a switch which will win them games in tight situations. But now you get to see the likes of Gary Ringrose, Mac Hansen, James Lowe. And all those kicking things that they've done in the past to turn the pressure around is now turning up in attacking situations. James Lowe's little grubbers behind and what that then leads to. And it pulls together 100% all-round rugby. It's very different to French, which is done off the back of the speed of ball than their individual creativity a lot of the time. But it's equally as effective. And, I would say probably it stacks up more often because it's done on systems, it's done on everything else.
Interesting. Andy Farrell said the lads can do anything at this moment in time. How we looked after each other was the most impressive thing. If we get any more injuries in the week, we might have to look at the old Belvedere under-12s or even turn to Shane Horgan, who hasn't said that. We'll lick our wounds and go again. England will be dangerous, but it'll be one hell of a weekend on St. Patrick's Day. I mean, this is the stuff dreams are made of this week, isn't it? Cheltenham into Paddy's Day.
I saw that quote and there was a great response from the old Belvedere under 14 account saying, warm up, lads. So it was, and there's a really good feeling about Ireland at the moment. Yes, there's the winning, which is important, and we're not so used to. There's the performance level, but there's also the admiration for these players, and Ireland have got over the line and had a couple of Grand Slams in the last 10 years or so, but never at home.
Yes.
And it just feels there's a lot stacking up, and it feels as if, I think there's a general feeling out there that people want this team to have a moment in the sun at home in the Aviva. St. Patrick's Day is a nice little bonus as well, and they want to celebrate it with the team properly. So it does feel like it's a little bit written in the stars. Now, I didn't necessarily feel that at the start of the Six Nations, but sometimes it does feel as if it's written, and I really hope so, because I don't know. We'll all have to go into therapy if we don't win this game.
Yeah. Do you know, as an England fan who has had many a day sitting in the pub watching England blow Grand Slams, you complete that sentence yourself.
As you see me streaky on the pitch, it does happen in my Ireland budgies.
It is, as a genuine rugby fan though, it is really exciting watching both Ireland and France at the moment. There is some proper rugby being played, and you have to doff your cap to it. I do want to get into England.
Let's just leave it there.
Should we just say goodbye?
Yeah.
Before we do that, can I just ask how much you enjoyed sitting between Sir Clive and Johnny?
I'm amazed you're awake, actually. To be fair.
But I didn't realize that. You know, you always keep your earpiece on during the game in the studio, because they came to see me to me during the commentary. So I didn't realize how loud that was in the studio.
Right.
And every time there was a good play or a try, obviously I was screaming the shit out of it to the point where Johnny's like, "Yeah, turn it down a bit. I think Clive is getting on you a little bit."
Oh, really?
Because he's sitting next to me. But no, look, they were both very kind, and they were both very welcoming.
What were they genuinely doing at? Because Clive's had a lot to say in his column and a lot to say afterwards. Was there a lot of pacing, or did they just sit and watch it in a passive, calm fashion?
No, to be honest, but look, they clapped on the great tries. Like, when they're good, they're good.
Yeah.
And they were just disappointing. They were just not understanding, and neither was I. Certain moments, you know, the Thibaut Flamand first try, it's that 50-22 kick from Antoine Dupont.
For
some whatever reason, the fullback and the winger, I think, just ended up switching in the backfield. We generally don't know why those things happen. Like you said, the jam on that first defense. There's a few things that were uncertainties that we just didn't really understand. Why did they get 3 turnovers in the first half in the rucks? Just like, guys, just not focusing on Jonathan Danty, who's got on his forehead saying, "I'm going to contest every single ball that's in front of me." There was just questions that weren't answered. That was them. They were just not understanding why those things were not being done.
What was very interesting being there is that, and we were both there in November, and there was real anger. There was a real sort of Eddie Jones anti-sentiment. It was very raw. I think almost the saddest thing about Saturday from a fan's perspective is just the apathy, and just everyone just sort of melted away. It was like, Jesus, have we got here? It sort of felt like a bit of a wasteland, really. There wasn't anything to kind of turn to or to reference. It just was an obliteration.
Yeah.
What did you?
Yeah, there's
where
no
do
real.
you start?
Look, I sort of, I've sort of played around with this in my head a little bit, and I'm fundamentally not going to go mental about it, because it just asks more general questions. It's like, who are we? Like, why? What are we trying to do? How are we trying to play? Does that mean I wouldn't change a lot this week? I would. I feel that you've got to have your people who compete at every play on there, and I don't. I think there are people who don't compete at every play. I think.
So who would you bring in then?
Well, I never thought I'd say this, but I think you need Faz this weekend. You need his mentality. You need his ability to shout at people and tell them when they're not doing their job. I think you need like a Johnny Hill. You need a big ump who gets in the way and is annoying, knows his role.
Did that in
be
Australia,
physical,
didn't he?
Get in the way. I would say you need someone like Billy back, because people fear him. And then I would say you need Manu back. Just for this game, I think you need to have people going, oh, fuck. There are people who carry genuine fear and also have done it. They're proven. I think at the moment, there's more question marks about whether players are capable. I've said I wasn't going to go hard at this, but it's not turning out that way. I just fear that are some people getting found that they're not international players. That's no disrespect for what they do in the Premiership. They are brilliant in the Premiership, but Test matches are different. And I go back to that. Who are and you look at it, who are the people that are going to be feared in that England team? And you maybe get a couple, with Genji being one of them. I mean, I feel sorry for him on being captain, and he's had to deal with that. He tried his best, but that's a fundamental thing that we're missing at the moment. Normally, our defence is something we can fall back on. It's always aggressive. It's always in your face. Missing the likes of Tom Curry, who sort of set that tone. Even Sam Underhill, who set that tone. Courtney would have to be in there as someone you need in Ireland. It's a tough spot, because then also you're not finding an identity by that. You're chopping and changing. So we're in a really tricky situation. I think everyone knows the team isn't where it wants to be. Now, are we starting to learn that it's not as good as we hoped it'd be? I think we are a little bit. But then where do we go? I don't know.
Tinds, is there a bit of a this week? And I'm sure this will be played back if England beat us. But is there an element of just getting through the game next week or this week coming? It actually doesn't matter that much if England lose the game. And even like performance, they just need to get through it and not have a disaster. and get the other side of the Six Nations and then build for the World Cup where they have a proper time, together and find that identity.
It does make me happy you say this, because I think when we last beat Ireland in Dublin, I think it was McFarlane came in and said, "Yeah, there's no chance that they're going to beat us." So hopefully we can clip yours up.
Yeah,
I just feel that at the moment they're in a point where they haven't shown anything about who they are as individuals in terms of how much does it matter to win.
Why is that not coming through?
So it was always said, the unseen things are the things you fall back on. Your work rate, your ability to get up and go hit, your physicality. They are unwritten rules. You can do that whether you've got skills or not. You can run hard. And at the moment, they're the fundamentals that aren't quite there, and then all the shape and everything else falls in around that. So they have got loads of they've got a lot of soul searching. But they're in a good position because the only people who can sort it out are themselves. And we hear how upset, well, as they would have been, how personally devastated they were in the changing rooms, and we've heard about the anger and how angry they were. Well, they got 7 days to let that sit there and stew, and then they unleash on the weekend, and that's the only redemption for them, is what they can turn up and do next week.
They looked like players that were anxious and sort of anxiety ridden. And you mentioned about sort of the quite fundamental mistakes they were making. So it's very hard. Those players shouldn't be making those mistakes, and they're too good to make those mistakes. So why are they doing it? It's not because they're underskilled. I think they're skillful players, and some of those mistakes are so basic you couldn't you couldn't understand why they make it. So is it a psychological thing here that if they get over that, the quality of the players is enough to perform to a high enough standard, or are we saying that this is a group or a cohort that actually have a fairly low ceiling?
Well, I don't know. At the moment, I'd say it's low ceiling in international rugby. That's ultimately what they've got to face up to, where they are and how people see them. But again, unless Botha's rings changes in the squad, they're the ones who've got to carry that. And if they go through this and they, let's say, Ireland bring their best game and they get another roast in, they're gonna have to face being judged as what they are as an England team, which I imagine how nice the press are won't be great.
No. What did you? How much time did you spend watching England on Saturday? I mean, it must have been quite hard because I know how passionate you are about those in blue. But
they played against France, right?
Yes, I know. But
I saw them the whole time.
But you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
A lot.
And what did you make of it?
So I don't think the English pack currently is big enough and ruthless enough to find their identity again and to handle France, who are very physical and very abrasive up front under wet conditions. So at a moment where even if you can't chuck the ball around, you don't have the amount of confidence, you don't really know where you're going. When you get to touch and you need to have a good driving maul, when you scrummage, you need to have a dominant force in there. So that's where I found them lacking a little bit. I still don't understand the combinations in the backs, how they fit all of them together. It might be a lack of game time. So I don't understand how some basic mistakes were made, but I just think clearly the confidence levels are particularly low. Clearly the lack of reassuring, easy, low-hanging fruit type of things that they could just pick up on, like the scrum, like the driving maul, like the general nastiness of their forward pack, like a Manu. Like it could have been a Batio Bastaro, could have been a Bandiaki, what he did for a long time. All these guys, the easy, that doesn't get you to be a world champ, but at least it can reassure you in the moments of doubt. Now, where I think England, unfortunately, are in impossible position is that, like Tin said, look, imagine you get the same team as they are now, and you bring in Johnny Hill, Courtney Laws, Billy Vunipola, Manu Tuilagi. I mean, look, with already what's given, of course they'll be scary. Of course they will be, but then you destroy the mentality of all the other guys, and if that's for 1 week, you just can't do it. So they're in impossible position. But for me, England, you just need to find again what they're very good at, and they're outstanding. And we spoke about this already. Everybody mentions the 2019 semi-finals. There's one team that could have beaten NZ. It was England. but I don't think New Zealand would have lost against the Springboks in the final. I genuinely don't. There's also types of teams and types of strategies for types of opposition. And England are very good, and France can be good because we're just in between. And that's why we're quite hybrid. So we're not the most reliable everybody, but we can compete with this physicality of the Springboks at their own game. And we can be as flash as Enden and NZ in Ireland sometimes, but we won't be as efficient and as clinical and as strategically perfect. But when we do, that's when we can beat everyone. And England were in that stage. And now they're neither. They're neither the fastest, neither the most clinical, neither the biggest. So they got to find one thing where they're really good. So I would concentrate on finding an extra bit of muscle, because that's my go-to, and it's an easy one to relatively go to rather than to try to transform a whole offensive system. Because, like Shane said, don't have time to do that to prepare for the World Cup. But first this week,
I was just saying, would this be a better team? Now this is me just throwing it together. If you had, and you were an opposition facing it, if you had Dan Cole, picking from the squad we have available that's on there, Dan Cole, still Jamie George, then you go
Ellis, George, Dan Cole.
Yeah. Then you go
Johnny
Hill. Marrow's got to step up. I don't know whether there's something wrong with him. I would still pick him because when he plays, you've got to trust that he can find that form, because there's no chance he becomes a bad player overnight. He needs to find whatever he's missing and get it and supercharge it. Then you go, I think Lewis Ludlam's still a man who carries hard, tackles hard, and is what we need. Your back row, I would bring Billy back in, but I'm going because we haven't. I'd bring Ben Erlin because he's aggressive.
We put Willis
carries
at 8.
fast. No, whichever way. I don't know what best suit that. That's for them to, and have Willis still in there. Then I'd put. I'm not sure about Jack Van Poorfeet, so I'd probably put Mitchell in there. I can't. The other one's Ben Youngs. That is going backwards, but probably in Ireland he'd probably quite suit in terms of manage. Farrell, Manu, maybe Porter, or maybe Slade. Don't know. Slade, and then you stick with the same back three because I think that's the best that's in there at the moment.
What about Courtney Knowles? Where's Courtney Knowles in there?
Courtney's injured
still.
Courtney's
injured still. He's not in the squad.
That's from the squad that was obviously been released on Monday.
Yeah. That's the,
you answer the question. Is that a more formidable team than the? I mean, the ironic thing.
But I think there's people in there who've been there and done it, and people who would, at the moment, maybe command a bit more respect. Like Sinks is obviously a good player when he's going forward. He's on the front foot, but I just think
there is a bit. The team that was named against France was the team that everybody wanted to see.
No,
that was the fans'
Me
choice,
included. By the way. But now we're on a one-off get. So this is it. Is it still? The biggest question is: are they going to stick with this? Is the process that we're going to get there, or does it? Do you go right?
Well, just because you've done it before doesn't mean you're going to do it again.
No.
Well, because a lot of those players haven't done it for a while.
We praised Borthas for dropping Manu because his form's not been there.
And you go right, that guy at his best, and that's how we view players, especially players that we like. Because that guy at his best, wouldn't he be so formidable against Ireland? But we go, well, actually, if he's not playing at his best, is he the right person either? And that's where it becomes difficult.
Is also that mentality is do people stand up in big games, and are those people the type that will stand up in big games? I've got slight issues around England's centres at the moment in the fact that they just don't feature in a game. Henry Slade, who can carry a game for Exeter, does not feature in any England games of the Six Nations. Against Italy, where we won, he touched the ball. He made 10 passes, he made 4 meters, he made 1 tackle. So what is he doing? And it's same with on both of them on the weekend. They had, I think Lawrence had 10 meters, he had 4 meters, and one made 2 tackles, one made 1 tackle. So either if you're not carrying it well, then you must be doing a load in defence. But why are they getting missed? Why are they getting lost?
Is that a game plan issue?
I thought Freddie Stewart on the weekend, at least he went looking for the ball all the time, and was probably the only one. Sort of came out with with some credit because, he obviously scored that try, hitting a great line. And at the moment, I just don't feel that anyone goes right. Fuck, I need to help the forwards out. I need to carry. or I understand that it's all like, where do I need to be? Out the back. I need to be out the back of here. But what happens if you lose the ruck there? You need to fucking be in the ruck to win the ball, to allow someone else to get it. And I think that's the sort of where they're at the moment, is they're playing to a process that sometimes you've got to fuck the process off and deal with what's in front of you. And I don't think they're at that place right now.
The fact you started this by saying, I'm really not going to get het up about it, and then effing and blinding, going red.
Paul, by the way, I spoke to Paul Grayson last Thursday, and he said something similar. He's saying that, listen, the shape looks all right, but nobody's reacting when an opportunity presents itself. It's almost like, all right, we've chalkboarded this. This is where we're meant to do. This is what happens. The ruck is here. We get the ball back here. There's another ruck here. But listen, if you make a break here, go after it.
No. But my third phase, I'm supposed to be over here.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have a third phase.
Right.
Yeah. I've been in teams that have done that before. Been in an England team that's done that before when we
where you're all running around trying to remember what was on the whiteboard, rather than what's on the pitch.
When we had Brian Smith, and I love Smithy, but he'd planned 4 phases. I'm like, well, what happens if we make a line break there? We're not going to do what we've done for the last phase. We might get rapid ball. We just walk through the middle of them. Shapes are great, but as soon as you get fast ball, which everyone is now trying to do, it doesn't matter about your shape. If you get quick ball, you should always get quick ball.
Yeah.
And you just need people sometimes to just step up and run.
I will be honest, I was sort of hoping for some answers today, and I'm feeling I'm getting deeper into the quicksand. I don't know quite where.
What do you expect? There aren't any answers. There are fundamentals. There are fundamentals. There's turning up, there's getting quick ball, and there's getting gain line, and that comes down to physicality and organisation. Now, set piece, I think we were 100% scrum, 100% line out.
Yeah,
that's our only positive. So then, but at least you can build off that. I thought they drove. I can't even remember a strike move. You remember a strike move?
No.
Remember us messing around at driving also, which got killed. So then you change it up. If you get killed, if your drive's not working, change it up. The whole point of bringing Ollie Lawrence in and taking out Faz is to give you some focal points, but then you don't use them. So that there's. I'm not going to help you here. There are fundamentals, being physical, and that is one thing you can do, and that's what England need to do on the weekend. There's your one.
Here's another one. Just reduce the unforced errors. You reduce you move
but that's
away.
Like saying don't drop the ball.
Yeah, well, I know, but it's pretty base, but. There's balls that they shouldn't be dropping, and if you take that out, and we said, is that a psychological issue? It's not. They aren't skilled enough to catch the ball. They are. If it's anxiety, is it stress, whatever it is, you remove that.
But I think they've been working on that.
I'm sure there's going to be a little anxiety going into this weekend.
Yeah. But I think there has been a big piece that has been worked on with this England, which is trying to reinflate the tyres. I think they were very low on confidence post the autumn. A lot of effort has gone into trying to elevate that, and it obviously, the pressure comes on, and it's obviously not quite robust enough yet.
If you had, here's one, if you could bring Eddie back now, would you?
Why are you asking me? Ask him.
Why are you asking me? I wasn't there. No.
What I think it has done,
or not just bring him back, if you could have kept him on and maintained.
Well, so this is what we said at the time: is that why would you get rid of that intellect? Well, you should have brought Steve in, and they should have done it together. I'm not
but they
sure.
Were planning on bringing Steve in, weren't they? In June,
I think so. Yes. What it does look like now is that is £4 million not very well spent in terms of shuffling the pack. At this point in time,
lots of money though, haven't they?
Well, not if everyone's leaving before drinking post match. Yeah, the question I sort of wanted to come on to is, and again, I can't really find any answers here. Are we just placing this all on Team England, or lots of people are now beginning to say, well, the gulf between the Premiership and international rugby is just too big, and the Heineken Cup having sort of fallen away as a priority means that gap is bigger than ever. Relegation means that these players don't play every week with that fear of failure in the way that they used to, type thing. Are we looking at the system for England? England's under-20s lose by 40 at home. Are you looking at the system now for answers, or is this all just fixable within Team England?
Deep. Look, I think we're just going. I do get the point about the Premiership. I do feel you don't slog out a win anymore. You either win or you lose, and they take it for granted. Whereas the art of hating losing, but and finding a way to win, like Ireland did on the weekend, I'm not sure is in the skill set of many of our young players at the moment. Now
so that is a system thing.
Yeah, but then I don't know how we change it. I don't know where the source of that would be. Does it go all the way down to like under 15 level, or does it just start when they hit academies and they're involved in clubs? I'm not entirely sure where that is. I mean, you look at something like Ireland and what it wouldn't. Why wouldn't it manifest that way in what's happening in France? I don't know.
Yes, because
why would it suddenly change at England?
Well, I suppose the broader question is this something that can be fixed by Steve Borthwick, or is this something that's going to take a generation and a complete overhaul in order for England to start? I mean, because this isn't an overnight decline. From that semi-final game that you referenced in 2019, England have been on a gradual decline.
But we do say the Premiership is great to watch.
But that doesn't necessarily translate into international rugby.
It doesn't, but then is the failure coming in what everyone wanted, the Premiership to be great to watch? And you hear about everyone wanting to watch the Premiership because it's so tight and it's so good. Now, does relegation instill that need to win? I always think it did. I never thought we shouldn't get rid of relegation long term. I know that it was a fix for through COVID and everything else, but it's part of English sport is having the jeopardy at both ends of the table. Well, not jeopardy. One's at jeopardy. One's
reward. Yeah,
reward. Yeah.
Do you see? Because it's not too dissimilar, the system in France and England, but France seem to have it working far better at the moment.
It is extremely current. I can't pretend like it's been a perfect situation. I think there's two issues. You talk about the under-20s and you talk about the competitive edge of the Premiership. That's two different things. I think the under-20s is just underlining how much, hopefully, the cycle of performance is going to be sustainable both for France and Ireland, because the next generation is being rebuilt. Right, that's what we're saying, and that's what England have based their previous successes massively on. I always remember France, banging on about the under-21s, the under-20s England winning the World Cup 3 times in 4 years or whatever it was, and that was ginormous when there was a Northern Hemisphere team that would do that, and they're like, that new generation is going to come and it's going to kill everyone. And then Lancaster had that generation and all that, and so we copied in France that system. I don't think you can compare the French and the Irish setups, completely different systems, but the reality is that youth shows you that those cycles are there to be repeated. Beautiful. It doesn't change the fact that there's an underperforming England side Saturday. That's not reflected by the under-20s. Now, is the Premiership really taking the value of Jamie George, Maro Itoje, and Owen Farrell down? I think that would be too easy an answer. Now, in the long run, I see what you mean, and I would agree that it's not going to create the new generation of players, maybe. Looking at it like this, I don't think so. France have got one thing right at the moment. They've got a very high-pressured, competitive top 14 that does not produce the best rugby in the world. Let's get this idea out of your heads.
It's simply not true. I was going to come up to, but it teaches you how to get a game won.
It does. It teaches you how to handle pressure. Yes. Does it teach you what European rugby looks like? Absolutely not. Montpellier have been getting flogged in Champions Cup for years, and they were top 14 champion last year. It's just different ball game, different atmosphere. But what we've done right for once is that we've got a league and a federation working together. That's the only thing that we've done that's fantastic. If you allow that talent that was always roughly there, maybe not that type of talent, but the good talent was always there, was just completely underused. So we're finally allowing the resources to back the talent. That's what we've done right, and we've put a platform for them to able to express themselves.
What do you make of it? Where's the balance between Team England and English rugby system?
I do feel that Premiership rugby is a bit of echo chamber as well. There's a lot of backslapping goes on, and as a product, it can be thrilling to watch. It's, a lot of high scoring, lots of tries, entertaining. I don't know if the quality is always phenomenal. You look at the teams in Europe, whether up against French or Irish teams, or more recently the South African teams, are those sides trembling at the prospect of playing against a Premiership side? They're not. They're definitely not. So I think there's a little bit of an echo chamber there as to how good it is. France have shown that even the style of play in the top 14. I think it's evolved recently, but it's very different than the French national side as well. So it's not like we've got a situation that you have in Ireland where Leinster is almost a feeder model for what the Irish team are doing. It's not, and I think that system works very well for Ireland, and it's nice when you have it. But you don't have to have that system. It doesn't have to be what you've got in France. And France have these big playing numbers, which England have even bigger player numbers. But what I think you have in France is you have a resilience that's built out of the top 14, and which is a very traditional league. And then you've got individual players of quality and flair. And there's something about, and I don't want to be stereotypical about this, but there's something about the French mentality that means there is a personality that comes across in their play. And you see that especially through the backs and the way, and it's bred in through the ages. The French players express themselves, and that's by throwing the ball in front, running and stepping and taking the opportunity when it's there, playing heads up rugby.
Bow ties and champagne.
It is, but you can see it in the back line and the way they play, and especially in the back three, and they're 9 and then they're 10. England at the moment, I think you've got a lot of players in the Premiership that are feeding the English system that are very, very similar in their outlook, in their they're dedicated, diligent, hardworking, but feel as if they're part of a system as opposed to an individual. And that kind of character is what is needed to go to the next level. And you can't just be, as we spoke about, it can't be all about system. You have to have that personality, that character, that ability to react. And it feels just at the moment that they don't have enough players that have that type of personality. Now, these things can change fairly quickly, but that's the sense I get from it.
I think we can also be, we could also be delving too deep, and it is just the struggles.
Well, if they win on Saturday, off we go again.
Yeah, well, exactly.
It's a big if.
As Hask, to be a bit Hask, we would, it could flip the next week if we get a win against Ireland. Everyone will be like, "Thank God we're back." As long as the performance is good and it's not just a dire Ireland or whatever, which, as the last 2 years will show, that's not going to happen. But there is something fundamental that only them as players can show, and the biggest thing this week that they can show is what they're made of. What do they stand for as 23 men who are representing their country? And that needs to come out most.
I just have this horrible feeling all of a sudden that the story is going to be.
Manu comes in,
it's going to be flipped. And you know what?
You've got a lot of injuries, Shane. Let's not forget.
Right, this is where the positivity
pressure's on you. You've already had the Grand Slam T-shirts made, haven't you? They'll be on sale.
He's now on
it's St.
Farrell
Patrick's
Jr.
Day
against Farrell Senior.
It's St. Patrick's Day weekend. The pressure of that alone. If there was ever a tournament that could happen in, it's the Six Nations. The Six Nations. These different stories every week. Listen, there is. It unfolds, and almost every week there's something. Remember last day, we thought it was kind of a normal basic day, and it was tied up, and France had it, but also we had that Italian result against Wales in the Principality. Who would have expected that? These things happen all the time, and as you said, there was a long history of England almost getting over the line and being expected to and not doing it. So. We're not counting the chickens just yet.
Can I ask
We're not
you,
drinking the pints just yet.
Well, you are drinking the pints, but not in celebration. Can I ask you each a personal anecdote of your worst day in a national jumper? So, Tinds, you had 50 put on you by Australia one year, didn't you? You didn't do Tour of Hell.
No,
I'm just interested as to take us inside. Did you do the 16 in New Zealand, or were you retired by then?
No, I didn't. I wasn't part of that. I was finished by then.
Although I don't know what my worst result
You
was.
went on a summer tour to Australia. Clyde Rathbone et al. 2004. I just love to know from each of you what it is like being in an international setup when you've basically had your shorts pulled down and you've got everything coming at you.
It's the worst week of your life, and knowing that you've got to go back out there again. Especially if you don't really know why.
That's what Ellis said. He said it's all a bit of a mystery at the moment. And I thought him and Steve spoke very well, actually. I mean, there's not really much else you can say, but
I think it's going to be the worst week of their life, but it's got to be.
Yeah.
If it means that much to you, it's got to burn you all week, and then you've got to show that it's burnt you all week. That is all they can do, is let that hurt sit and fester. And even if it means they get fucking yellow card in the first, it's got to come out, and it's got to.
But it's hard to turn. And I was trying to think when was the worst experience of my international rugby, and it was the World Cup in 2007 when there was so much expectation on Ireland to win, and it went from bad to worse to even worse to a disaster. And so, first couple of games, we nearly lost to Georgia somehow.
Right.
We nearly lost
the
to
intercept,
Georgia.
wasn't it?
Yeah, very nearly lost to Georgia. Went out, played France, got pumped by France. Didn't fire a shot. Then we had to win by 4 tries against RG to qualify, and weren't at the races. Got unbelievably well beaten by them, and it was the expectations, it was the humiliation, it was the ability. It was the inability to change things because it was a World Cup. We were out. We were out at the group stages, and it was our own expectations of this being an opportunity and a generation that we were meant to deliver on, and an understanding that we'd probably never deliver on it, and that my best mate Dennis Hickey's retired, so he's definitely not going to. He's not going to be part of it, and it's horrific. It's absolutely. And then we go back home to, again, like a humiliation of being asked, everyone says, what happened? What was this? What's the real story? Why were you so shit? And what can you say? I don't know. Listen, tell me the answers. I didn't clue. And to this day, I still don't know what the issues there. England will be feeling a bit of that. And that's why I think it is difficult. People say, oh, listen, got England, get Ireland, they will be fired up now after the results. And yeah, they will, but there is an emotional drain. You still got to get it right. You got to change stuff. You got to get to the emotional pitch.
Get your fundamentals right, stuff.
So that's hard to do in a week. That's very hard to do in a week.
Right. Really glad we've brought you down to our level. You were all bouncing excited before, and now we've gone through 07. It's going to be fascinating. Should we finish with... I'll tell you what we should do, actually, because and I know we'll not have many Italian or Welsh listeners, but they always complain that we don't talk about them. Because as you watch that extraordinary game.
Extraordinary game. And I'd say Italy will be kicking themselves. Bounce to the balls are cruel, but they were very nice to Wales.
Yeah.
The bounce off that kick for... Rio Dyer's try, and then the bounce of the miss pass that was, the old bouncing pass, the greatest miss pass in ever, where it skims off the floor straight into your winger's hands and he walks it in. Without that, they didn't. They created Reece Webb created that try for Tony Faletau. Apart from that, they created nothing.
Yeah,
and Ireland and Italy created at least 4 definite tries that then bad handling butchered. Their passing was. Everything was behind, and it stopped them. And I can't remember whether it was the second row that went through, and all he had to do was give it, and then the tackler fell off him, so he thought he could make it, and then someone else sickled him, whereas he could have just passed the ball. They should have won that game, but it was still enthralling to watch.
Yeah.
The amount of times Wales have still got issues defensively because they got carved open between 13 and wing, but. They will be so happy, Wales, to have a win on the board. They won't care. It's Italy. They'll be ecstatic that their momentum has turned and they've got something. They're going to France this weekend. Could give me a short-lived.
Yeah.
But that's the pressure on France now. Is after that performance, is not to go. We've done it. They've got to go. If they talk about going into the World Cup, they need to repeat it this weekend, a performance of that standard, and then they really will ride off into...
I think they're going to pump Wales this weekend.
Yeah.
I just think everything's made with how Wales are defending. And I know that Ben doesn't want us to blow smoke up France's ass. I just think everything is made for that. That Wales team is too leaky at the moment.
4th win in 16 for Wales. And I love Kieran Crowley afterwards, who took a swipe at Wales by saying, good on them for the win. They beat us today by box kicking. Which, coming from an Italian head coach, I think has got a bit of form to it. And obviously Scotland as well. And a word on Hoggy in his 100th. Did some nice scenes, actually, leading out with the kids.
Yeah,
look, that.
I think he's a fantastic player. I think any player that gets to 100 is obviously a fantastic player. I think
looking better now than he did in his 10th cap.
Yeah, I mean,
which is remarkable.
He's a fantastic promotion for getting your hair done.
Yeah, he really is.
Turkey is the key destination for anyone struggling.
Yeah.
We were talking about Jameson Gibson Park. He might be heading over there. It was a bit patchy, isn't it, at the top? But tanned. Teeth
and Schlitt.
And Schlitt. But no, I'm so happy for him to get to 100. I think he's deserved it. I think his whole journey that we've discussed on the pod in the past and why he feels he has to always get better at rugby because of his friend he sadly lost. And I love the way he plays, love how attacking he is. And I know he'll be hurting because I think they really thought they could have a go at Ireland on the weekend.
Those scenes were really emotional. So we were in the box beforehand, and was with Johnny Beattie, and he started welling up. He couldn't. We went to him. Sarah Orchard went to him for commentary, and he was like, "I can't." And I had a massive lump in my throat as well. And it did strike me as there's something beautiful about being able to share that. His daughter was sort of nuzzled in to his shoulder, and there's something beautiful about being able to share that time in your life with your kids, and. It was very high emotion, and I just wonder if it was almost too much emotion for him, because you had 3 kids out. Then his son ran on with the ball.
I guess some wheels as well.
Yeah, he did. He signed him up.
Yeah,
and then and just before that there was the anthem, and Huggy looked really sort of distressed almost in the anthem as well. So there was a huge amount of emotional energy. And listen, it translated onto the pitch for the opening half for Scotland certainly.
Yeah. Well done to him. And we will talk about Scotland in more detail another time. They are fun to watch, though. I know it doesn't always come right, but they are a lot of fun to watch. Let's wrap things up with our favourite pizza makers, Domino's, and our Domino's Doughballer of the week, where we look at the standout performance from the weekend's action. Pick us a player, please.
By a mile, Thibaut Flamand. Second row for France. I thought he was absolutely extraordinary.
We're going to have him on the pod, you said.
I think you should have him on the pod. He's got a great story.
Speaks better English than you said.
He speaks perfect English. Belgium-born, who decided that he wanted to have a go at professional rugby. How do you do that? Well, the closest he could think of was to go to a good uni in England, which is Loughborough. Was playing number 10 for the 5th team at Loughborough.
Number 10 for the
5th team at Loughborough, and ended up obviously going to the back row, second row, picked up by Wasps, who play a game against Bath. Bath's coach is a French guy, Pierre-Henri Brocon, who used to be the Cats coach, got sacked 2 months ago, originally from Toulouse. Wasps are going to play Toulouse in Champions Cup. He calls him like this young French kid. You have to look at him. It's not possible. When there's a French guy playing in the Premiership, you're gonna understand. And Toulouse signed him. 6 months later, or 7 months later, he's a bit like a Maro Itoje. He's French international. He wins the Grand Slam. He wins Champions Cup and wins top 14 with Toulouse. And he's a lovely bloke.
And we don't need to get him on the pod now because
you should. He's a lovely bloke, and I think he represents everything that is. You know how Tim said some guys will be good Premiership players? For me, he is absolutely a world-class international rugby player.
Yeah,
he is super tall. He's got great hands. That little flick by Romain Tamac, he picks it up. The number of locks that will have the ability to just gently step and keep on going. He's a fantastic rugby player who is really taking that jersey. Now it's going to take a lot to take it away from him. Yeah. After Cameron Woki stepped up and Willem C on the number 5 shirt. No, so I was really, really happy for a guy who coming back to England was something emotionally important for. Who plays with great hands, great heart, and he's got a hell of a brain on him. I was really, really impressed by his performance.
Mac Hansen, he was a superstar for Ireland. Not just
and another guy who's got a fascinating backstory. Has sort of appeared on the international scene. Looking to the man of the ball.
There's a few sort of apocryphal stories about how he was recruited. That he was in a boozer in Sydney.
Sign him up.
Immediately. And the coach of. Friend who's the coach of Connacht, his son worked in the bar and said, this guy who's half decent, we bring him over. So it's a little bit, I don't think it was quite that, but the story, if this
number on a beer mat, call me if needed.
Print the legend, isn't that what they say? So he came over, has had a stratospheric rise, if that's my pronunciation is terrible, excuse me, to the top. Played with Connacht, did really well, into Ireland, hasn't looked back, but his level of performance at the weekend was a joke. Key moments for Ireland, I spoke about it earlier, turned the ball over when Ireland were really under pressure. The first try, he had a beautiful bit of skill to regather for Lowe's try, and then he was involved in Conan's try as well, where he stepped on the inside, held the full inside, and threw a super flat ball across his body, which put Conan away. And more than that, his involvements as that second wave attacker. So Ireland do that sort of loop play. More and more they're using their blind side wing as a distributor, and he's distributing it beautifully with these big long passes, 10, 15, 20 metres across the field, putting Ireland in space. Top performance from him.
I think big pizza for Thibaut Flamand. We'll have a medium-sized pizza for Matt Hansen. And who would you like to throw your pizza at?
I had Dupont, Dante, Flamand and Matt Hansen.
Okay.
So if you want me to pick a little pizza, then I'll take Dante.
Dante is not going to have a little pizza. We'll get 3 big pizzas sent out.
Okay, well, then I'll give it to Dante.
Dante's quite interesting because they spent a lot of time in the build-up talking about the fact that he was ready. Has he been on quite a journey, Jonathan Dante?
Well, he pulled out of injury, so he hurt himself against South Africa, but then ended up playing against Japan. Wasn't really perfectly back fit, and then hurt himself with La Rochelle, and was out for a while. He really thought he wasn't going to make it back for the whole Six Nations. He was back in the 42-man squad or something like that for the Scotland week, but got sent back to have a few more minutes under his belt. Played 1 game with La Rochelle, came back.
Good on him. Right, that is our Doughballer of the week. We'll send 50 quid worth of pizza to each of those, and hopefully that might slow them down for the weekend to come. Thank you, Domino, for getting involved. We're also on to the final straight of our Six Nations Mystic Mike's predictions game.
It's terrible.
How are you getting on? Well, actually, we'll come on to that.
I feel we take more risks than Hask does. Hask is like
do you want to deal with where he sits right now? The man who knows nothing about rugby.
He knows nothing about rugby, yet he's 50th in the league.
45th out of 2,570.
In the league. And
the guy doesn't know.
Are you back
pin the
at
tail
bottom?
on the donkey. I've gone down again, yeah. I picked Wales, England and Ireland, but I'm down in 1,812. I had a very bad start. You picked Italy to win, but won the other 2. You're 1,531st. Where are you going this week? Scotland, Italy?
Scotland, Italy, Scotland by 20.
Scotland by 20. Any disagreements with that over Italy?
No, I think Scotland will pump them.
Just a little bit too much, but I think it will be convincing.
Okay, Scotland by a head for you. France, Wales.
France. I'm going ridiculous now.
France by 57.
32.
France by 32.
Yeah.
Higher or lower?
Lower.
Don't be conservative. Now is the time to play your.
No, lower.
Okay, France by
what? It'll
what?
be complicated. By 12.
I think it'll be more than that. Maybe not quite 32. But, 3 tries. They scored 3 tries more than Wales. They'll easily do that. I'm going to say about 25.
Okay. Ireland, England. After everything we've said, is this the moment?
Everything in my heart is saying that they're going to turn up, they're going to rock up, and they're going to surprise. So that would be Ireland winning by
17,
by 9. I actually think that Ireland will win by 20.
Do you?
17 to 20. Oh, 17. 17. Okay, I'll settle on 17.
Okay.
Ireland by 9. I think England will front up.
Yeah, I think 10.
No, you don't.
I do.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. It'd be a nice farewell that for Johnny Sexton. I know he'll obviously have warm-up games, but I thought he was quite emotional when he came off at Murrayfield. It sort of feels like
that's another thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's gonna be his last.
Come on,
he's going to take the point. He's going to take the points record. He's going to take the points record off Rog as well.
He is because they're tied at the moment.
Yeah, Rog will be sick.
Yeah, he won't.
He can take his points.
Yeah, take the
level
Six
at
Nations. Yeah,
557,
points record.
I think it is.
I've actually heard that. Ronan O'Gara's coming into England camp to help prepare them for
that. It wouldn't surprise me. Let's hope for a belting finale. Well done, Hask. As I said, 45th out of 2,570. Tinds 1531, and the less said about me, the better. Also, I don't even know how you pronounce this. Revoot predicted, who's in the game, predicted Wales by 12 exactly, France by 12, and Ireland by 15 exactly. I don't know why I'm mentioning that, but well done to you. I did also want to quickly give a shout out to a little girl who emailed Tinds, who said, Hello, I'm Holly, and I'm 9 years old. The terrifying thing is I'm sort of hoping she's not a regular listener. I'm hoping she's been told to email us.
Well, it's a bit of fruity language.
I know we like to appeal to everybody.
But I'm hoping her mum's again.
Right.
So hopefully it's a mum who's reached out.
Yeah. Do you want to do this? Nice little note from Holly.
Yeah, it was a lovely note that made me feel all warm inside this morning. So I do find it interesting. She's a truck motorsport fan.
Yes.
It's quite niche sport to get into at age 9. But she's got her bike branded up in My Name is Doddie's colours and his tartan. And she is going to cycle every track that she goes to, the truck motorsport.
The British Truck Racing Championships.
Yeah, and she's riding one course twice, and she's looking for sponsorship to raise money for MND and for the My Name's Doddie Foundation. So she's a legend in my eyes now already at 9.
You said you would...
Mia,
I was going to say.
If you're watching this, which you hopefully...
Go to bed.
You're not, because, but yeah, I'd love it if Mia had that passion about something. So when I get home, we're having a word.
And Holly has got a Facebook group. If you'd like to sponsor her, go and check out Holly's Cycle for Doddie and MND. Good luck, and what a fantastic cause to be raising money for. We have a new section on the show called Absolute Shirt Show. If you'd like your club or your club legend or your club president or an outgoing hero of your club to have their shirt featured on the show, please do send that in with the story, and we'll feature you on the GBNR set. Send us a DM if you'd like to get involved in that. Don't miss this week's The Good, the Scaz and the Rugby in partnership with Vodafone, because there's a new episode out on Thursday with the Red Roses and Bristol second row Abby Ward, who for all intents and purposes is the RFU's new maternity policy guinea pig. Well done to Abby and her husband Dave Ward.
And on that, if you are a bit low at the moment, at least the Red Roses are coming to your screen soon. So
very true.
You'll see an England jersey winning.
Get out and get supporting the Red Roses when their Six Nations starts sooner rather than later. Well done to Abby Ward, who's on the show this week on The Good, the Scaz and Rugby. Of course, we're off on tour. If you don't know by now, we have got our World Cup after party. I hope we'll be celebrating rather than commiserating, but plenty can happen between now and then. 17 dates, the length and the breadth of the country, from London to Leicester, Swansea to Southend and Exeter to Edinburgh. We'll be sharing our World Cup stories and recapping the action from France 2023 and generally getting into all things GBNR. And tickets are on sale now at ticketmaster.com, should you want to go and have a little look at that for November. Some exciting World Cup news for all of you with the great people at Infinity Rugby, because Hask, Tinds and myself are going sailing for 2 of the biggest weekends. At Rugby World Cup France 2023, we are on NCL's epic cruise ship. I can't believe I'm saying this. In the centre of Marseille, apparently there are 4,000 rugby fans on board for the opening weekend of the tournament and the quarterfinals.
How is Hask going to
How is Hask going to cope? He's going to be in a little dinghy tethered to the back.
Can we please put a Meet Hask section in where he has to go and sit for 2 hours and shake hands?
He has to meet all 4,000 people and take a question from each of them.
And the cruise ship came back with only 3 people alive.
Yeah. So we're going to be in Marseille for the opening weekend and the quarterfinals. I think we're off to Ibiza actually on the quarterfinal weekend as well. And I am not making this up. We're going to be hosting Q&As, doing live shows and covering some of the games on the top deck big screen. Get that in the right order. Including the blockbuster opening night clash between France and New Zealand. Allez les Bleus. Hask is going to be DJing as well as meeting all 4,000 people on board. To celebrate the announcement, Infinity Rugby are offering GBNR listeners 10% off any Rugby World Cup France 2023 package when booked before the end of March. T's and C's always apply. Simply quote the code IST GoodBadRugby when booking via phone or email. Discounts apparently not available for online purchases. But if you fancy what is going to be an absolute tear-up in Marseille, which will be one of the great venues of Rugby World Cup 2023, visit infinitysportstravel.com/GBR to come and play. It will be a lot of fun. Don't miss out on that. Don't forget to subscribe to The Lock-In if you haven't already. That's the extra pod we put out each week. This week we've covered Tinds and his alcoholic triathlon exploits and Tinds and daytime TV, which was highly enjoyable. That's available via Apple. Merch on the website, as always, for the superfans. And that is it for us. Hopefully it has commiserated and gone through the process of catharsism for England fans. Hopefully it's whetted the appetite if you're a France or Ireland supporter. Enjoy the final weekend. GBNR is produced by Shara Kilgallen and Ollie Hunter and is a folding pocket production. Enjoy everything that happens on the final weekend, and we'll see you next week for a Six Nations debrief. Bye for now.